Hi guys, I'm Tracy. Thank you for joining me today. So in today's video, I'm going to be going over the new Sonia G eye brushes that I just received, as well as revisit the Sonia G buffing brushes, the Master Face Buffer Pro and the Smooth Buffer. I'm going to insert some B-roll of me using those brushes again with the Dior powder and the Hourglass finishing powder. But let's first start with the eye brushes. So I just got these over the weekend, so I've only had a pretty short period of time to try them out. So I got the Jumbo blender, which I don't have anything quite like this one, so I'm really excited to have this one. Normally I don't get these big pinched ferrule eye brushes because they're usually too big for my eyes, but I was actually able to make this work pretty well. So you guys will see that in the demo. I also got the classic crease, which is one of the fairly larger blending brushes from her Sky set, the larger of the two. And then I got the mini booster, and I'll show them all next to each other. So the mini booster, classic crease, and then the jumbo blender all right here. And I have to say I'm really enjoying them, considering I've only had them a couple days. So there you go. So I used the classic crease to do this entire eye look on this side. I did use the mini booster to do the shimmer in the inner corners, but everything else on this eye was done with the classic crease. And so far, this is the most impressive brush of the three so far, because I was able to do pretty much, most of the task. I was able to lay down the first transition shade. I was able to deepen out the crease. I was even able to do the lower lash line. I haven't washed these yet, so the reason I was probably able to do that is because it's pretty stiff. But I think, from what I can tell, this is the most versatile brush. I think you can do a full eye look with this one pretty easily. And then on this eye, I use the Jumbo blender and the mini booster to, so I use this larger one to lay down the first shade and deepen out the crease. And then I use the mini booster to deepen out this part, the outer part of my eye, do the lower lash line. And then I use the Jumbo booster to put the shimmer, which normally I wouldn't use a brush quite this big and fluffy to do the shimmer, but it worked out fine. I'm going to do some comparisons that I have. So the Jumbo blender is pretty unique to my collection. The only one that I could find that's kind of like it is the Ahodo GS1, but the Ahodo is much bigger. It's actually not that much longer, but it's wider. This one is also made out of gray squirrel hair. And to be honest, I don't really use this Ahodo brush because it's just a little big, but it's the only one that I can kind of compare it to. But it's thinner and the hair's a little bit longer. The hairs are silkier on the Ahodo, and I would say this one, the Ahodo, is probably harder to blend with, but you can kind of use both of them in a similar way. If you have larger eyes, maybe this Ahodo would work. But if you have smaller eyes, I do think the Jumbo blender would be a really good choice to use in the crease. And it also can do lower lash line. So this one I think is pretty versatile, more so than I thought it would be. And I was going to use it to do a little shimmer on the brow bone. I didn't do that. Let me try it. So clean under the brow bone. So I really liked how that did that. It wasn't too heavy of an application, but enough to see it. Do it on this side too. Oh, that worked really well. So yeah, I'm actually really happy with this one. I wasn't gonna get this just because it looks so big online, but what I liked about it was that it was pretty fluffy, So it was different, you know, from anything else that I have like this. So that's the Jumbo blender. Now the classic crease, the closest thing would be the Hakuhodo G5522, but the Hakuhodo is much bigger and it's got squirrel and goat hair. So it's really not very similar. I mean, this one is much fluffier. The hairs are longer. It's wider at the base. It's just a bigger brush. But I think the classic crease will be able to like define your eye, line your eyes. And I do think this is more useful than this one, because this one I pretty much only use for a transition shade and that's it. It's just a little too big for my eyes to define anything. So I'm really happy with the classic crease, and I was surprised at how many tasks I was able to do with the classic crease. Now, one that I've been planning to get for some time is the mini booster. And the only two that I can kind of like put them between is the Hakuhodo J5529, which is pretty identical to the Refer 13, and then the Wayne Goss 19. So this is the Refer 13, which is like the Hakuhodo, but I wouldn't compare the mini booster to really any of them, but if anything, it's closest to the Wayne Goss 19. But as you can see, it's much more tapered than the other ones. So the Wayne Goss is much more domed, and the J5529 and the Refer 13 are much more domed. So these are my favorite for deepening out the outer part of my eye and also doing lower lash line. But this one is much more stiffer, and I know that's probably also, I haven't washed or used it much, but I'll try to compare them to the 19. It's just got a lot more spring. This one is a lot fluffier and I mean, it looks a lot bigger, but at the base they're pretty similar. So I know this one's going to fluff up a little bit more, but I don't think it's going to be nearly as fluffy as the Wayne Goss 19. So these are pretty unique to my collection, and the main reason is because Sonia G eye brushes tend to be a lot more deliberate, meaning when you put the brush on your eye, it will concentrate more color where you put that brush, as opposed to, for example, the Wayne Goss 19, it will put a little bit less where you put the brush, and it's just a lighter brush. And I've just been so accustomed to using the Wayne Goss and Hakuhodo eye brushes, they tend to be more airy and fluffy. So that's just how I kind of started doing my eye looks. But I don't think it will be too hard for me to start incorporating these Sonia G brushes. Till now, I've only had 3 other Sonia G eye brushes, the Worker Pro, the Flat Definer, and the Builder 3. And of those 3 brushes, I use the Builder 3 the most, just to line. And the other 2, I just never really got the hang of. The Worker Pro, I was expecting it to be a little bit like the J5523, because they look very similar, but they don't feel the same. The Sonia G is much firmer, it's much more deliberate, and sorry, it's not focusing. And it just doesn't fluff up as much even after washing and using it. And I do prefer the Hakuhodo over this one because, you know, it's fluffier. To me, it diffuses the color a little bit more than this one. This one will keep the color closer to where you place it, and the same for these as well. So I would say if you had to compare these to like the Hakuhodo version, these are a lot more precise and deliberate, but so far I'm really liking them. It's just a different feel for doing your eyeshadow versus the other brands, and I don't have quite anything that I can compare them to so far. And yeah, I wish I can give you guys more, but I wanted to show you these brushes because they're in stock, and I know especially these two blending brushes. These tend to go out of stock pretty quickly. So if you guys were looking at this, I wanted to show them in action. So those are the eye brushes. Now I've been getting a lot of requests to revisit the buffing brushes. And so I'm going to show the B-roll of me using the Master Face to powder with the Dior powder, no powder. So I use it, I'm not sure. But I'm really enjoying this for buffing. And then I use the smooth buffer on the other side with the same powder. It's just a different feel like when you're doing it, but I think the results are pretty much identical. They're really good at smoothing everything out, blending everything in. I try to do my cheeks kind of like in a like a little heavier, less blended look so that you guys can see the results of using these blending brushes. And I think they're really good if you kind of went overboard with bronzer or a highlighter or blush and you just kind of want to blend everything together, make it look a little bit more seamless. I would say these all are really good at that. And then I use the Buffer Pro to do the Hourglass diffuse light ambient lighting powder, and I use that in the middle of the face because that one's kind of light for me, so I didn't want to like lighten everything up after I bronzed everything. But I think they're all good. I just think it's a matter of preference. I do think the Master Face for me is probably my first choice for the final blend and for finishing powder, but they all produce fairly similar results. And I also revisited the Chikuhodo GSN2, but because these hairs are a lot shorter and this is actually denser than the other ones, I feel like this lifts my base makeup, and for me that's a problem because I have a lot of stuff to cover up. So I'm not going to recommend this for the same reason. And I did used to use this for cream and liquid foundation. It's just I put this in storage because I have other brushes that I think are better for that. But I know that this is one of Chikuhodo's most popular brushes, but I don't think this is quite as versatile as like the Master Face, because I don't know, I wouldn't pick this for finishing or for buffing unless you have a lot of patchiness and you really want to like tone everything down. Then this can do a good job. But if you're like me and you really need your foundation to have that full coverage, this I think is more likely to kind of lift that and make it a little muddy. So that's my thoughts on the GSN2 for buffing. And I still, of the four that I've been talking about, I still really do like the Master Face over the other ones. And I'm just so glad I got this and I was able to get it this time around. And I don't know, I really do love this one. So I can't say, so of these three, if you don't have any of them, I do think the Master Face would be my first pick, and then maybe the Buffer Pro, or if you have a smaller face, you have less space like here, the Smooth Buffer will be better because this does fluff up quite a bit. So it's not as specific, but I've heard some of you guys say that you think this one is more versatile. But I do think if you're going to use it for bronzer, highlighter, and blush, I do think this one is a little bit better for that, but that's just my preference. I like a smaller cheek brush. I tend not to use my very large bronzer brushes, but I don't know, they're all great, and I think you can't go wrong with any of those Sonia G buffer brushes. So that's really all I had for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.